Hello, I am Disbrew and we start the news today with the fact that despite Diablo Immortal having one of the worst launches of all time when it comes to marketing disasters, it's still been a massive success, raking in $49 million in its first month and getting 10 million downloads. For a game that was this openly, blatantly pay to win, I'm amazed that anyone even touched it with a 10-foot barge pole. But this is a game that got 3.5 million downloads in its first day, 6.3 in its first week, and while you can see that its downloads did tail off over time, its revenue didn't. Sure, it has a decline since launch, which is what you'd expect, but if you compare the downloads to the revenue, the declines do not match up at all, and this means it's definitely still getting player attention, especially when it comes to those whales, which is what the game was made for. Everyone knew that Diablo Immortal was going to rip you off. It was going to be pay to win. This was before launch, and yet still everyone rushed to it. And when I say it's been a massive success, I mean that. Because this has made 50 million of 10 million downloads, and we've got other mobile games to compare it to, like Apex Legends Mobile, which in its first month made EA 11.6 million from 21.8 million downloads. So Apex got over double the downloads and made less than a quarter of the money. Why? Because Diablo Immortal is just more mask off about it. It's going to push more things at people, it's going to exploit more people, and the sad thing is, it works, and while there may be some questions as to the longevity of the download base when it comes to this game, I have to ask if being this blatantly pay to win makes Blizzard a lot more money. Isn't it common sense that they're just going to double down on that in the future? And this was a game that previously would have been kept to mobile alone, but it wasn't. These figures do come from only the mobile source, but it was also on PC, and I'm hoping that the revenue on PC was drastically less, because otherwise we can probably expect to see this slip into a PC games as well. And when I say this game was blatantly pay to win, I mean it. There were huge titles at first saying that this game was going to cost you $110,000 just to level up one character to max, and the worst thing is, that wasn't accurate. No, it was 3 to 6 times more, in fact, as now it's turned out it can take up to 300,000 to 600,000 to level up a character, because this comes down to the fact that once you've put all your gems into a piece of gear, well, now you can awaken them, and for that, Blizzard give you the benevolent option to just stick a load more gems in there as well. Mobile gaming has always had this reputation for just being microtransaction heavy and pay to win with whales farming everyone else, but most of them were created as mobile games, and the bigger titles like Call of Duty that went over there are often a lot less severe about it. Diablo was one of the first major titles to go over there and just completely destroy your wallet, and when it turns out that the game is this successful, you really have to ask, what motivation do other game developers have not to follow in their footsteps? Because if gamers keep falling for this stuff and keep opening their wallets for massive microtransaction heavy games, the only thing we're gonna get is more of them. If there's one thing in gaming I'm fed up with, it's remasters and remakes. Look, we get it, you don't have the talent to replicate the kind of games that you used to, so going back to the good old days is just really cheap and easy way to make a lot of money. Or at least you'd think so, because Rockstar has reportedly canned GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption remasters for a very good reason. Now, this isn't officially from Rockstar, it is from a leaker from Red Dead on Twitter, but my favourite part about the story is exactly why they canned it. Because as he says, remasters of 4 and Red Dead Redemption 1 weren't in production, they were simply in the ideas phase and remained there for years. Rockstar's original plan was to start with the trilogy and follow up afterwards. The decision to greenlight more depended on the initial reception of the trilogy, and I don't know if you remember that trilogy, but I certainly do. Boy, was that a disaster. Laziness was certainly the name for the game when it came to Rockstar. They didn't care about this at all, and all they did is basically just throw on an AI upscaling algorithm, and it smoothed stuff out. That's why the AI doesn't know he's meant to be wearing a jacket, and it's not just that he's broken his arm about 17 different times. Rockstar quickly found out that yes, remasters and remakes are the cheap, easy, lazy way to make money, but you can still be too lazy, and Rockstar is nothing if, not lazy when it comes to this stuff. These are people that didn't want to make a new GTA just because their GTA Online game was just raking it in with shark cards. They didn't feel the need, and they thought they could double dip on the revenue streams by doing remasters and still keeping GTA Online and their shark card game carrying on simultaneously. Luckily though, their own laziness backfired on them, and that means good for us. Because the backfire means that Rockstar are reportedly prioritizing GTA 6, rather than just going back and rehashing old content for an easy payday. Now, unfortunately, Kotaku, who did break this news, said that after GTA 6 is out, we could still revisit remastering GTA 4 or Red Dead Redemption, and it's not entirely out of scope. And while I can understand that you never want to rule out a product that could possibly make you a lot of money in the future, I would say that anyone who's hoping to avoid the broken arm, weird, twisted reality that could befall GTA 4, you may not want to hold your breath. Sony have been looking into emulators recently. Yes, it turns out the games companies aren't against emulators, as long as it can make them money. And that's why Sony have filed a new patent, which suggests that PS3 integration could be coming to the PS5. Titled Systems and Methods for Converting a Legacy Code into an Updated Code. Honestly, you just could have called it an emulator, dude. Also mentions various different peripherals for the PS3, such as the iToy, PlayStation Move, PlayStation Media Remote, DualShock 3, PSP Go, and more. Obviously, at this point, most of those peripherals are long gone and they're not made anymore, so it might also focus on how we can get those games that use those peripherals to work with the PS5 and what we've got currently today. And the reason for this is obvious. With Sony's new PS Plus Premium membership subscription, there's a built-in incentive for Sony to make that subscription worth as much as possible to get as many people onto it. And while at the moment you can play some PS3 games by cloud streaming, if you can play that natively on a PS5, well, that frees up a lot of their computer hardware, it makes it cheaper for them, it gives gamers lower latency, and seems just to be a win-win for everybody. It does make me laugh how games companies have ignored their back catalogs for decades and actually got out and targeted websites which engaged in emulation in any way, shape, or form in the past. But as soon as they realize they can get a subscription fee out of it, well, all of that goes out the window, and the sound of money is a hell of a lot more convincing to them. At the end of the day, old games being playable on modern hardware is a net gain however you look at it. It's just a shame that it's taken this long for games companies to start getting on board. Back in 2020, Fall Guys took gaming by storm. It was kind of a flash-in-the-pan game, but it went to meteoric success incredibly quickly out of nowhere, and unfortunately tailed off just as fast. But it has recently seen a resurgence as it's gone over to other platforms, gone free to play, and it's just got a massive influx of new players. So much so that now they say that Fall Guys has around 20 million players. This makes it one of the few games which has actually successfully revived a game that, to all intents and purposes, was dead. And it did that by spreading out over more platforms, making all those platforms interplayable. You can have crossplay on basically any platform, and then they made it free. And in that case, as long as your game is actually entertaining, it's going to be a success. That's how they ended up getting 20 million players in just the first 48 hours of their new Season 1. And for the Steam platform on PC, we can actually see the actual numbers themselves, as its all-time peak back in the day was 172,000 all-time peak. But since it's essentially re-released as free-to-play, it's peaked at around 60,000 concurrent players. Obviously, this is a far cry from its original peak, but even getting 30% of your player base back on the platform can be counted as a massive success, especially when in January it peaked at only 10,000. That's a lot of players back. You combine that with all of the other platforms, which are also going to be a lot more popular because that's nowhere near 20 million, then what you have is a very successful, very addictive, and very simple game. And I think at this point, whether you actually like Fall Guys or not, you still have to admire people who, after 2 years of work, actually managed to revive their game and make a success out of it again. A lot of people, a lot of games companies would have just ditched a game that died. And Fall Guys, they seem to have done the exact opposite. But for now, that's it from me. Let me know what you thought of any of the topics down below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.